family. Welcome to the Joyful House. Welcome to this beautiful Sunday afternoon of November the 30th, 2025. It's hard to believe that the year is almost over. Welcome to Once Upon a Storybook. Today we are continuing the Anne of Green Gables series with book number 4, Anne of Windy Poplars, and we're almost getting to the end of it. We have about 2 more weeks after today, so exciting, and then we'll move on to the next book. Today we are going to be looking at the 3rd year, chapters 9 and 10. So if you are ready for this storybook adventure, then sit back, relax, and let's see where it takes us. Starting with chapter 9. And it says, extract from letter to Gilbert. Gilbert, I'm invited to have supper tomorrow night with a lady of Summerside. I know you won't believe me when I tell you that her name is Tom Gallen. Miss Minerva Tom Gallen. You'll say I'm reading Dickens too long and too late. Dearest, aren't you glad your name is Blythe? I am sure I could never marry you if you were Tom Gallen. Just fancy. Anne Tom Gallen. No, you can't fancy it. This is the ultimate honor Summerside has to bestow. An invitation to the Tom Gallen house. It has no other name. No nonsense about elms or chestnuts or cross for the Tom Gallens. I understand that they were the royal family in old days. The Pringles are mushrooms compared to them. And now there is left of them only Miss Minerva, the sole survivor of 6 generations of Tom Gallens. She lives alone in a huge house on Queen Street, a house with great chimneys and green shutters and the only stained glass window in a private house in town. It is big enough for 4 families and is occupied only by Miss Minerva, a cook, and a maid. It is very well kept up, but somehow whenever I walk past it, I feel that it is a place which life has forgotten. Miss Minerva goes out very little, excepting to the Anglican church, and I had never met her until a few weeks ago when she came to a meeting of staff and trustees to make a formal gift of her father's valuable library to the school. She looks exactly as you would expect a Minerva Tom Gallen to look. Tall and thin, with a long, narrow white face, a long, thin nose, and a long, thin mouth. That doesn't sound very attractive, yet Miss Minerva is quite handsome in a stately, aristocratic style and is always dressed with great, though somewhat old-fashioned, elegance. She was quite a beauty when she was young, Rebecca Dew tells me, and her large black eyes are still full of fire and dark luster. She suffers from no lack of words, and I don't think I ever heard anyone enjoy making a presentation speech more. Miss Minerva was especially nice to me, and yesterday I received a formal little note inviting me to have supper with her. When I told Rebecca Dew, she opened her eyes as widely as if I had been invited to the Buckingham Palace. It's a great honor to be asked to the Tom Gallen house, she said in a rather odd tone. I never heard of Miss Minerva asking any of the principals there before. To be sure, they were all men, so I suppose it would hardly have been proper. Well, I hope she won't talk you to death, Miss Shirley. The Tom Gallens could all talk the hind leg off of a cat, and they like to be in the front of things. Some folks think the reason Miss Minerva lives so retired is because now that she's old, she can't take the lead as she used to do, and she won't play second fiddle to anyone. What are you going to wear, Miss Shirley? I'd like to see what you wear. I think you should wear your cream silk gauze with your black velvet bows. It is so dressy. I'm afraid it would rather be too dressy for a quiet evening out, I said. Miss Minerva would like it, I think. The Tom Gallens all like their company to be nicely arrayed. They say Miss Minerva's grandfather once shut the door in the face of a woman who'd been asked there to a ball because she came in her second best dress. He told her Bess was none too good for the Tomgallons. Nevertheless, I think I'll wear my green voile, and the ghost of the Tomgallons must make the best of it. I'm going to confess something I did last week, Gilbert. I suppose you'll think I'm meddling again in other folks' business, but I had to do something. I'll not be in Summerside next year, and I can't bear the thought of leaving little Elizabeth to the mercy of those two unloving old women who are growing bitterer and narrower each year. What kind of a girlhood will she have with them in that gloomy old place? I wonder, she said to me wistfully not long ago, what it would be like to have a grandmother you weren't afraid of. That is what I did. I wrote to her father. He lives in Paris, and I didn't know his address, but Rebecca Dew had heard and remembered the name of the firm whose branch he runs there. So I took a chance and addressed him in care of it. I wrote as diplomatic a letter as I could, and I told him plainly that he ought to take Elizabeth. I told him how she longs for and dreams about him, and that Miss Campbell was really too severe and strict with her. Perhaps nothing will come of it, but if I hadn't written it, I would be forever haunted by the conviction that I ought to have done it. What made me think of it was Elizabeth telling me very seriously one day that she had written a letter to God asking him to bring her father back to her and make him love her. She said she had stopped on that very home from school in the middle of a vacant lot and read it, looking up at the sky. I knew she had done something odd because Miss Prouty had seen the performance and told me about it when she came to sew for the widows the next day. She thought Elizabeth was getting queer, talking to the sky like that. I asked Elizabeth about it, and she told me. I thought God might pay more attention to a letter than a prayer, she said. I've prayed so long, he must get so many prayers. That night, I wrote to her father. Before I close, I must tell you about Dusty Miller. Some time ago, Aunt Kate told me that she felt she must find another home for him because Rebecca Dew kept complaining about him so that she felt she really could not endure it any longer. One evening last week when I came home from school, there was no Dusty Miller. Aunt Chatty said that they had given him to Mrs. Edmonds, who lives on the other side of Summerside from Windy Poplars. I felt sorry for Dusty Miller, and I have been excellent. I felt sorry for Dusty Miller, and I had been excellent friends, but at least I thought Rebecca Dew will be a happy woman. Rebecca was away for the day, having gone to the country to help a relative hook rugs. When she returned at dusk, nothing was said, but at bedtime, when she was calling Dusty Miller from the back porch, Aunt Kate said quietly, "You needn't call Dusty Miller, Rebecca. He is not here. We have found a home for him elsewhere. You will not be bothered with him any more." If Rebecca Dew could have turned pale, she would have done so. Not here? Found a home for him? Good grief! Isn't this his home? We have given him to Miss Edmonds. She has been very lonely since her daughter married and thought a nice cat would be company. Rebecca Dew came in and shut the door. She looked very wild. This is the last straw," she said, and indeed it seemed to be. I've never seen Rebecca Dew's eyes emit such sparkles of rage. "I'll be leaving at the end of the month, Mrs. Macomber, and sooner if you can be suited." "But Rebecca," said Aunt Kate in bewilderment, "I don't understand. You've always disliked Dusty Miller. Only last week you said—" "That's right," said Rebecca bitterly. "Cast things up to me. Don't have any regard for my feelings. That poor dear cat. I've waited on him and pampered him and got up nights to let him in, and now he's been spirited away behind my back without so much as a by your leave. And to Sarah Edmonds, who wouldn't buy a bit of liver for the poor creature if he was dying for it, the only company that I had in the kitchen." "But Rebecca, you always—" "Oh, keep on. Don't let me get a word in edgewise, Mrs. Macomber. I've raised that cat from a kitten. I've looked after his health and his morals, and—" What for? That Jane Edmonds should have a well-trained cat for company. Well, I hope she'll stand out in the frost at nights as I've done, calling that cat for hours rather than leave him out to freeze, but I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. Well, Mrs. McCumber, all I hope is that your conscience won't trouble you the next time it's 10 below zero. I won't sleep a wink when it happens, but of course, that doesn't matter an old shoe to anyone. Rebecca, if you would only... Mrs. McCumber, I am not a worm, neither am I a doormat. Well, this has been a lesson for me, a valuable lesson. Never again will I allow my affections to twine themselves around an animal of any kind or any description. And if you'd done it open and above board, but behind my back, taking advantage of me like that, I've never heard of anything so dirt mean. But who am I that I should expect my feelings to be considered? Rebecca, said Aunt Kate desperately, if you want Dusty Miller back, we can get him back. Well, why didn't you say so before then? Demanded Rebecca Dew. And I doubt it. Jane Edmonds has got her claws in him. Is it likely she'll give him up? I think she will, said Aunt Kate, who had apparently reverted to jelly. And if he comes back, you won't leave us, will you, Rebecca? I may think it over, said Rebecca, with the air of one making a tremendous concession. Next day, Aunt Chatty brought Dusty Miller home in a covered basket. I caught a glance exchanged between her and Aunt Kate after Rebecca had carried Dusty Miller out to the kitchen and shut the door. I wonder, was it all a deep-laid plot on the part of the widows, aided and abetted by Jane Edmonds? Rebecca has never uttered a word of complaint about Dusty Miller since, and there is a... Rebecca has never uttered a word of complaint about Dusty Miller since, and there is a veritable clang of victory in her voice when she shouts for him at bedtime. It sounds as if she wanted all the Summerside to know that Dusty Miller is back where he belongs and that she has once more got the better of the widows. Chapter 10. It was on a dark, windy March evening when even the clouds scudding over the sky seemed in a hurry, that Anne skimmed up the triple flight of broad, shallow steps flanked by stone urns and stonier lions that led to the massive front door of Tom Gallen House. Usually, when she passed it after dark, it was somber and grim, with a dim twinkle of light in one or two windows. But now it blazed forth brilliantly, even the wings on either side being lighted up as if Miss Minerva were entertaining the entire town. Such an illumination in her honor rather overcame Anne. She almost wished she had put on her cream gauze. Nevertheless, she looked very charming in her green voile, and perhaps Mrs. Minerva, meeting her in the hall, thought so, for her face and voice were very cordial. Miss Minerva herself was regal in black velvet, a diamond comb in the heavy coils of her iron-gray hair, and a massive cameo brooch surrounded by a braid of some departed Tom Gallen's hair. The whole costume was a little outmoded, but Miss Minerva wore it with such a grand air that it seemed as timeless as royalties. "Welcome to Tom Gallen House, my dear," she said, giving Anne a bony hand, likewise well sprinkled with diamonds. "I am very glad to have you here as my guest. Tom Gallen House was always the resort of beauty and youth in the old days. We used to have a great many parties and entertained all the visiting celebrities," said Miss Minerva, leading Anne to the big staircase over a carpet of faded red velvet. "But all is changed now. I entertain very little. I am the last of the Tom Gallens. Perhaps it is as well. Our family, my dear, are under a curse." Miss Minerva infused such a gruesome tinge of mystery and horror into her tones that Anne almost shivered. The curse of the Tom Gallens? What a title for a story! "This is the stair down which my great-grandfather Tom Gallen fell and broke his neck the night of his housewarming given to celebrate the completion of his new home. This house was consecrated by human blood. He fell there." Miss Minerva pointed a long white finger so dramatically at a tiger-skin rug in in the hall that Anne could almost see the departed Tom Gallen dying on. She really did not know what to say, so inanely, "Oh." Miss Minerva ushered her along a hall hung with portraits and photographs of faded loveliness, with the famous stained glass window at its end, into a large, high-ceilinged, very stately guest room. The high walnut bed with its huge headboard was covered with so gorgeous a silken quilt that Anne felt it was a desecration to lay her coat and hat on it. "You have very beautiful hair, my dear," said Miss Minerva admiringly. "I always liked red hair. My Aunt Lydia had it. She was the only red-haired Tom Gallen. One night when she was brushing it in the north room, it caught fire from her candle, and she ran shrieking down the hall wrapped in flames. All part of the curse, my dear. All part of the curse." "Was she—" "No, she was not burned to death, but she lost all her beauty. She was very handsome and vain. She never went out of the house from that night to the day of her death, and she left directions that her coffin was to be shut so that no one might see her scarred face. Won't you sit down to remove your rubbers, my dear? This is a very comfortable chair. My sister died in it from a stroke. She was a widow and came back home to live with her husband's death. Her little girl was scalded in our kitchen with a pot of boiling water. Wasn't that a tragic way for a child to die?" "Oh, how— but at least we knew how it died. My half-aunt Eliza, at least, she would have been my half-aunt if she'd lived, just disappeared when she was 6 years old. Nobody ever knew what became of her." "But surely—" "Every search was made, but nothing was ever discovered. It was said that her mother, my step-grandmother, had been very cruel to an orphan niece of my grandfather's who was being brought up here. She locked it up in the closet as the head of the stairs, and on one hot summer day, for punishment, and when she went to let her out, she found it dead. Some people thought it was a judgment on her when her own child vanished, but I think it was just our curse." "Who put— What a high instep you have, my dear. My instep used to be admired, too. It was said a stream of water could run under it. The test of an aristocrat." Miss Minerva modestly poked a slipper from under her velvet skirt and revealed what was undoubtedly a very handsome foot. "It certainly— Would you like to see over the house, my dear, before we have supper? It used to be the pride of Summerside. I suppose everything is very old-fashioned now, but perhaps there's a few things of interest. That sword hanging by the head of the stairs belonged to my great-great-grandfather, who was an officer in the British Army and received a grant of land in Prince Edward Island for his services. He never lived in this house, but my great-great-grandmother did for a few weeks. She did not long survive her son's tragic death." Miss Minerva marched Anne ruthlessly over the whole huge house, full of great square rooms, ballroom, conservatory, billiard room, 3 drawing rooms, breakfast room, no end of bedrooms, and rooms, and an enormous attic. They were all splendid and dismal. "Those were my Uncle Ronald and my Uncle Reuben's," said Miss Minerva, indicating 2 worthies who seemed to be scowling at each other from the opposite side of the fireplace. "They were twins, and they hated each other bitterly from birth. The house rang with their quarrels. It darkened their mother's whole life. And during their final quarrel in this very room, while a thunderstorm was going on, Reuben was killed by a flash of lightning. Ronald never got over it. He was a haunted man from that day. His wife," Miss Minerva added reminiscently, "swallowed her wedding ring. What an ex— Ronald thought it was very careless and couldn't have anything done, and wouldn't have anything done. A prompt emetic might have, but it was never heard of again. It spoiled her life. She always felt so unmarried without a wedding ring. What a beautiful— Oh, yes, that was my Aunt Amelia. Not my aunt, really, of course, just the wife of Uncle Alexander. She was noted for her spiritual look, but she poisoned her husband with a stew of mushrooms. Toadstools, really. We always pretended it was an accident because a murder is such a messy thing."
Hey, beautiful. You've got a text message.
Sorry. "We always pretended it was an accident because a murder is such a messy thing to have in a family. But we all knew the truth. Of course she married him against her will. She was a gay young thing, and he was far too old for her. December and May, my dear. Still, that did not really justify toadstools. She went into a decline soon afterwards. They are buried together in Charlottetown. All the Tom Gallants are buried in Charlottetown. This was my Aunt Louise. She drank laudanum. The doctor pumped it out and saved her, but we all felt we could never trust her again. It was really rather a relief when she died respectively of pneumonia. Of course, some of us didn't blame her much. You see, my dear, her husband had spanked her. Spanked? Exactly. There are really some things no gentleman should do, my dear, and one of them is spank his wife. Knock her down? Possibly. But spank her? Never. I would like, said Miss Minerva, very majestically, to see the man who would dare to spank me. Anne felt she would like to see him also. She realized that there are limits to the imagination after all. By no stretch of hers could she imagine a husband spanking Miss Minerva Tongallon. This is the ballroom. Of course, it is never used now, but there have been any number of balls here. The Tom Gallon balls were famous. People came from all over the island to them. That chandelier cost my father $500. My great-aunt Patience dropped dead while dancing here one night. Right there in that corner. She had fretted a great deal over a man who had disappointed her. I cannot imagine any girl breaking her heart over a man. Men, said Miss Minerva, staring at a photograph of her father, a person with bristling side whiskers and a hawk-like nose, have always seemed to me such trivial creatures. Well, thank you for joining me today for our storybook adventure. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I definitely look forward to coming back and reading more with you. Have a great week, and I will see you next Sunday. And until then, be joyful, my friends. Be the joy in everything you do, and hug yourself daily. Mwah. Nugs and joy. See you next week.